How important are berries to the outside nature? That's what we're going to talk about today. Hi, this is Jill from the North Woods, talking about nature topics right outside your front door. Well, berries are pretty important to us too. They're very nutritious and good for us. But for nature, berries are one of the most underestimated food sources out there. Think about it. Long after flowers fade and the insects disappear, berries remain as a concentrated packet of summertime energy. Many shrubs, trees have different kinds of fruit on them, but they don't drop their fruit right away. We see that, like you get an apple and the apple falls from the tree, as soon as it's ripe and ready to go. But many of the shrubs and trees keep on with their fruits at all times. They hold on to them as much as they can. A lot of those are bright red or purple or blue ones we see, even in the nature time against the white snow. They are there as survival tools for the trees and the shrubs themselves, but they store an incredible amount of sugar and even some fats in there that help them grow during the growing season, preserve them with almost like taking the sunlight's energy and storing them in these little tiny balls. And then during the hardest months of the year, namely wintertime, when the landscape looks kind of desolate and empty to us, the berries are signals that food is still available. So when you look at various types of birds and animals, let's just talk about birds. You see that a lot of times the insect eaters, they leave, right? They are not here for winter. We don't have any insects. That kind of idea. The seed eaters, some of them stay and some of them go because the seeds get covered up by snow, but there are still enough seeds kind of popping out of the snow here and there that the seed-eating birds who do stay in winter can survive all right. But then you have the berry eaters, and you think about cedar waxwings, you might think of robins, all sorts of different birds will eat berries packed full of sugar and will help these birds survive these cold winters. But if you even think more about, robins, they're kind of a perfect example of birds that stay around in wintertime because they're flexible. In the summertime, they pull up worms and bugs from the lawn. Once the ground freezes, they shift entirely almost to berries. Flocks of robins will move from tree to tree. Crab apples, hawthorns, certain kinds of ash trees have berries. Here we have service berries and some other types that have it. And the berries are still hanging there, untouched. They will be available to anything eating berries for a really long period of time. Cedar waxwings even go further in this. They're almost entirely dependent on fruit, travel in tight flocks. You'll see them in little gangs of 20 going, from tree to tree to tree to tree. And when they arrive, like I said, a tree could be full of berries. And within a few minutes, they'll just strip the tree of all the berries. They're very good berry eaters. The berry bearing plants don't just feed individuals that are there. They're sort of creating these gathering spots. Like a single tree, heavy with fruit, can attract multiple species at the same times. Like I said, robins, waxwings, bluebirds, mockingbirds, a lot of the overwintering sparrows stopping in for a quick snack. And these trees become kind of hubs for all sorts of a variety of birds. And when you might have a very quiet yard, you might see a sudden flock come in of a bunch of different birds, and then off they go. So it's exciting to see. And so I have planted some service berries in my backyard, and I see a lot of birds hopping to those particular berry sources that they have. Mammals also enjoy berries as well. They're not just the birds. The mammals rely on them because, again, dense in sugar, buried in snow. You'll see deer kind of shrubbing around in the bushes looking for berries. You might see foxes and coyotes looking for fallen fruit. And they're just trying to gather calories everywhere they can. Squirrels will stash berries among their nuts and other food that they gathered for the winter. And sometimes these caches of food will get forgotten almost entirely. And you might see mice, voles looking for these squirrel caches for dropped berries or buried berries beneath the snow. you'll see little tiny tracks. We talked about tracks last week, and the seed fragments being left behind as they're going in one side of the vole and out the other side. So the berries kind of connect these animals that may never meet at all, but they sort of depend on each other for food sources in different kinds of ways. So not all berries are appealing at the same time. Some are very bitter and some of them are very dry when they first ripen, which discourages animals from eating them too early. As winter progresses and the freezing and thawing breaks down the fruit structure, the fruits will soften, make the sugar more sugary, and that will delay how tasty those fruits are, therefore spreading the availability of food across the season and making it more available as it gets closer to spring, where the plants are going to start to grow once again. So the berries themselves paste in order to ensure that the winter allows them the right time for them to be eaten and for them to be deposited out the other end for planting season. In some cases, fermentation happens with berries, and this gets kind of funny because we have seen this before. When the berries age and the temperature then starts to hover around freezing, the natural fermentation can occur. The yeasts are already present in the fruit, and they start breaking down the sugar, creating a very small amount of alcohol. And so the birds feeding on some of these berries, especially the enthusiastic ones like the cedar waxwings, that's usually where you see it, they can end up slightly intoxicated. And this has led to some documented cases of birds flying very clumsily, sort of sitting still and looking a little dazed. And it's not usually dangerous, but it's kind of a funny thing to know that these natural systems aren't always tidy and sometimes kind of funny. And they are part of the winter survival too, as a little bit of an unintended comedy as well. When berries start changing, over the winter time, you'll start noticing that winter looks very barren. Right now, it looks very barren outside my front door. And then suddenly you see kind of the red dots, on the branches. And Em and I have been going hiking in wintertime. This is something we just started 2-3 years ago. It sort of seemed to us like as soon as it started snowing, we were indoors and that's the end of it. And then suddenly we're like, hey, a lot of people go outside hiking and looking for birds in winter. Why don't we do that too? And we are surprised often about how we'll stumble across a tree or a shrub packed full of red berries. It is, first of all, very beautiful, and it looks amazing against the snow. But like I said, it becomes this whole pantry for birds and animals coming there and feeding in these winter seasons. So again, another case where winter is not a stall of nature. It is still part of nature's story right outside your front door. It's just a little bit different chapter, different strategies in place in order to get food and energy stored, if you're a bird or an animal. So paying attention to berries and then watching what happens to those berries. Now I can see out my back window, now that I have the serviceberry tree, more and more different birds flying in and out and enjoying the berries I have in my backyard. You too can also plant berry plants that are native to your area, and that will help in order to, kind of make populations a little bit better. People usually stress that when you are trying to plant berries and fruit that are for the nature outside your back door, it usually helps to plant something native. It's built for your environment. It's built for your conditions, whether it's dry or wet or cold, sunny, whatever it is. But also because the animals recognize them. They recognize them as available food sources if you pick things that the birds and the animals recognize as common fruits in your area. But it's kind of a fun experiment to grow berry plants in your backyard. Again, it helps the native population, and it gives you something to look at when you're looking outside your back door. All right, everyone, thanks so much. Appreciate it much. I'm so happy that you're listening. I thank you. Please remember to subscribe and tell a friend. I am on YouTube, and this is a podcast that you can watch it and listen to it any way you like. Usually when it comes to YouTube, I try to bring pictures in, show you what something looks like, if it's an animal tracks, if it's Orion star. It has a little production value there so that you can see more about what I'm talking about, but whatever way you listen, I'm so glad you're there. Thanks so much and have a great day.